Hi everyone. Wait, am I allowed to say that? Well, regardless, hi everyone. My name is Cyrus. I do country music reviews. I do some video essays on albums and songs. And today I'm doing my first in-person review because I thought this deserved a much more serious and engaging review. Of course, I'm talking about the debut studio album from Mickey Guyton, Remember Her Name. I'm sure many of you know by now who Mickey Guyton is. She's an up-and-coming black country star who's getting a lot of love from Nashville you normally don't see for a woman in country. Last year she hosted the ACM Awards with Keith Urban and is getting a lot of promotion as of lately, and is currently nominated for New Artist of the Year at the CMA Awards and is most likely the front runner for that category. The discography of Mickey Guyton actually goes all the way back to 2014 with her EP Unbreakable, where she presented pop vocal styling with some solid country instrumentals, and she showed off her belting vocals in a very rationally balanced manner. Basically, she was everything I wanted Carrie Underwood to be, given at the time Carrie was going through a very awkward phase of her career. With solid vocals, powerful stories, rich instrumentals, Mickey was someone I thought that can bring in the more broad listening audience that likes crossover hits. Unfortunately, Mickey never got to see that spotlight unlike her other female counterparts, as country was going through what many argue is the worst era of music in the past century. It was because of the bro era and the demand for toxic machismo douchebags, Mickey's output got very little to any promotion. And after her self-titled EP in 2015, she would only drop singles every now and then, with the song Why Baby Why peaking at number 45 on the Billboard Country chart in 2016. It wasn't until 2020 she became more aware to the public eye with her critically acclaimed song Black Like Me, which was inspired by the deaths of Bossum Jean at the hands of a police officer. And it was after this song, Mickey's career seemed to be given new life, as she's now released her highly anticipated debut album, Remember Her Name. Which, if you don't know, the album name is inspired by Breonna Taylor, another victim who was shot at the hands of police officers. And while this album certainly won't be the biggest or produce numbers of the biggest records this year, I firmly believe this album represents the current cultural state of country music. Well, not really the album itself, but more so the reception of it. Country music hasn't been the most respected genre in recent years, to put it lightly. First, you had the removal of Lil Nas X's Old Town Road, which sparked massive controversy, as at the same time Meant to Be by BB Rexa and Florida Georgia Line was allowed to continue to chart when nothing about it was country. You had the Morgan Wallen racial slur controversy of this year, which Mickey Guyton herself has weighed in on. And it was because of her weighing in on the issue she began to be insulted and harassed at an even more insulting rate than Morgan Wallen himself. And while you do have some artists who are willing to keep its good and honest name intact, you also have artists who want to drag it into the mud. But I'm beginning to go off track now. The reception of this record to me truly represents the culture of country music at the moment. Will people accept it, love it, hate it, be disgusted by it, or completely ignore it entirely? And regardless to what I think of it, there are going to be people on both sides of the culture war who are going to question this review. If I were to give this a positive review, you'd have a bunch of alt-right idiots call me an SJW libtard cuck. It's happened in the past. And if I were to give this a negative review, you'd have people question if I have a racial bias against Mickey, which I don't. That I'm overseeing the issues at hand in America. And to me personally, that road goes nowhere. I'm gonna do my best to represent the middle of the road for people who actually want to give this album a shot. You do have a subsection of the country community that is blatantly racist and sexist, and will not give this record a shot whatsoever. As well as people who don't want politics in their music, and to quote Anthony Fantano, they'll reel back because they think they're too good to hear anyone else's opinion because they know how the world works. And it really shows why people hate the two-bucket political system in this country. Because if one view comes out of your mouth that's primarily represented from one political party, you suddenly represent all of their ideals. And it causes ignorant people to just assume face value themes without even touching the first song. You're gonna have people assume my political biases based on the color shirt I'm wearing. That's the point we've gotten to. But anyways, I've been ranting for quite a while, so let's actually get into the album. So, what do I think of this record? In fact, it's actually pretty good. For the most part, Mickey Guyton has produced a solid, front to back, really engaging, often thought-provoking record. Is it the most versatile album to be released this year? Definitely not. It has its issues as it goes along, but most of them don't really impact me in a very negative manner. In fact, the more socio-political themes presented are actually the highlight. We open up with the upbeat self-titled track, and while it has some solid country music stylings, it's pretty much a blatant pop song. And we get tracks like that so often now, so I really don't care. At this point, if you can make me a good song, that'll satisfy me, and I'm happy. Which this song mostly accomplishes with its strong hooks in its chorus, and a truly exemplary performance from Mickey herself as we near the end of the track. I get the uplifting vibes it's going for and how it wants to represent this sense of loss and hope, but a more serious tone, at least for me, would have given it a stronger edge. Am I asking for a dark and gritty track on the level of Black as a Berry by Kendrick Lamar? No, but it has an almost carefree, childish sense, and it really confuses me to say it best. But apart from that, the song is very well produced, and the writing is actually really strong. The next track, All American, is a unity anthem using the small town metaphor to represent that we are all American, highlighting the racial and cultural divide present in the United States. And while I do appreciate its efforts, the amount of imagery in this song is about as impressive as the Jameson Rogers Project with its small town songs. I will say, I do enjoy the bass and the solid country instrumentals, but honestly, we have so many unity anthems just like this one, I can live without it. Different has some solid messaging, but the fast tempo really loses the gravity of the message itself. I do think it has some pretty witty lyricism saying, I don't want to fit in, I want to fit out, or don't want a cookie cutter watering me down. It's very clever. Like, I honestly was really impressed by that. But they're just clever lines in a progressively awkward track. But we entirely shift gears with the fourth track entitled Love My Hair, which honestly is a Song of the Year contender for me at the moment. It's this triumphant power ballad of self-love and acceptance of one's own identity. Mickey gives this song so much care, allowing for one of the most beautiful tracks for mainstream country music this year. I do wish this was the closer of the project as it wraps up a lot of the arcs of persecution, self-love, and acceptance. It seemed like a missed opportunity for me personally. The following tracks, Lay It On Me and Higher, continue those themes of Love My Hair in this really bright tone that's really wholesome. And Mickey's vocals build to this climactic conclusion that I find really empowering. Dancing in the Living Room is a bit of a detour on the project while having some smooth production and instrumentals. I don't really get the point of it being here. The halfway point of the album has a very serious tone set up, and this slice of life song I would see as the album's resolution, not really the setup. Do You Really Want to Know sees Mickey asking this partner if they will accept the real them for their flaws and insecurities, asking them if they believe it or see her true self as weakness. It kind of represents a very soul-crushing low point of the album. I wish the tone of the song was less optimistic and darker because it would add a sense of confusion as whether or not this partner will accept them. And the background vocals and driving rhythm of this song kind of spoil and tell us that answer already. Afterwards, we get the critically acclaimed Black Like Me. Now, while I wouldn't say this song is controversial, you do have a bunch of idiots that will, pardon my French, bitch about this song. If anything, you had more people saying the song didn't say a lot about the issues Black Like Me represented. And I agree more with that faction of the country music community. Black Like Me has a very empathetic message with some really strong soulful hooks. But I was hoping the song could go the extra mile and give this more of a socially aware edge, especially in its writing, which I Can't Breathe by Her or This Is America by Childish Gambino were capable of doing in this year, or in this case, The Past for Childish Gambino. I also would have loved if the Our Voices version of Black Like Me made it onto the final release, giving it a more movement-esque vibe it's really trying to represent. But beyond that, it's a good enough track to be up there with some more compelling songs tackling similar issues during the past year. Words seems to be a response to the cultists attacking her for expressing her opinion on the Morgan Wallen controversy. In fact, during the interview of the 2021 Grammys, it was revealed that she was undergoing a lot of stress to the point where she had an early pregnancy. pregnancy. And you get a lot of that emotional conflict throughout the entire song, saying while sticks and stones won't break her bones, she is still vulnerable and suffers from anxiety and stress. The following track, What Are You Going to Tell Her, to me represents the emotional climax of the project. Being told in a third-person perspective of a parent being forced to tell their daughter the harsh truths of the world, that dreams are difficult to achieve, that others have it better than you, and inherently life for a young black girl isn't fair. And this parent must debate on breaking this young naivete or tell these tough pills that are incredibly hard to swallow. I wish it had a more thundering build-up because it represents the emotional breaking point of the project, and it stays in calm waters, and I'm not really getting the direction for that choice. Smoke is probably my least favorite song on the entire project as it serves no purpose at all. It doesn't tie into any theme or ideal presented on the entire record. Everything else has this playful banter and it feels tonally jarring. Meanwhile, the sonic direction of this track is very confusing at best, going from this upbeat, twangy jam to a faster pop song. And it just feels rushed out and should have been cut from the record entirely. Especially when you compare it to the following track, Rosé, saying while there are a lot of tropes of drinking whiskey and beer in country music, she'd rather sing about rosé. And while the song doesn't really set rosé apart from any other alcoholic beverage, you could really just say you wanted Grey Goose vodka in place of this, and pretty much how it's just mad-libbed alcoholic beverage songwriting. Mickey herself admits it's a cliche and doesn't care, in a similar fashion to how Morgan Wallen addresses the bro country tropes presented in Still Going Down. The song blends some strong reggae and country, making for this really strong jam of a song. I really enjoy Indigo's use of colors in its lyricism, saying indigo isn't the most glamorized color in the rainbow spectrum, and how it's bluer than blue, emphasizing the sadness of this person. It is such a great lyrical detail, and it's one of my favorite lyrical lines to come out this year. We also get a cover of Beyonce's 2008 song, If I Were a Boy, with some beautiful vocals and a truly raw performance. I do think the abrupt transition from chorus to verse is awkward, but this song's clarity is excellent. And the album then concludes with a remaster of her 2015 song, Better Than You Left Me. And I get why it's the final track. It coincides with the various themes of self-acceptance of oneself, but using a breakup song to not only emphasize but conclude your story is odd to say the least. The song itself is good, and I enjoy the modern instrumental evolution and its soulful and melodic vibe. However, I would have rather had a completely new song conclude the album, as like I said before with Love My Hair, but relatively a strong enough way to conclude the record. Anyways, Remember Her Name by Mickey Guyton is in fact quite a good record. It's tightly produced. Even for the songs I had multiple complaints for, production wasn't really an issue. Instrumentally, there are some solid genre mixings of country and soul. Maybe not Yola level or Sturgill Simpson level, but it does have a strong presence. Lyrically, this is where the album surprised me the most. A lot of the cuts on here, like Indigo and Higher, are really strong. Unfortunately, the more provocative and thought-provoking ideas presented on the album are not as good as they can be. I think they have far more potential than any of the other songs on their project, and they just felt like they didn't want to cause controversiality or make people think as much as they should. Especially songs like Black Like Me, which, while good, didn't go the extra mile in tackling these issues in ways other albums and songs have been capable of doing in the past few years. And to some, that might be a good thing, not having political ideology being the center stage of an album. But for me personally, I would have rather had the more socio-political and more progressive themes be the driving force of the album. And what themes are there have an awkward sense in its narrative pacing and placement. So yes, this record is pretty good. But for someone who's brought up a lot of issues online and in interviews, Remember Her Name doesn't remotely come close to what Guyton says regularly compared to what she says musically on this album. But regardless, I certainly enjoyed myself a lot more than I expected I was going to going into this album. Rating wise, I'm feeling a light 7 out of 10 on this album and do recommend to listen to it. Well, that's all I've got. I've never really done a title card before, but please check out these other reviews and videos on the channel and have a nice day.